Okay, welcome and good evening to the AA this evening. We are very happy today to have Astrid Klein and Mark Dyson speaking to us. But before that, I would like quickly to thank the people who made the series of events in the last couple of days who were featuring the work of Klein Dyson, such a great success. In particular, I would like to thank the exhibition department, Vanessa and Simone, who put so much effort in conceiving and actually making this exhibition next door possible and actually such a great success. Also, I would like to thank our maintenance department, Colin and Leszek, who spent the last night in the school, locked in, making sure the exhibition is ready on time. In fact, in the morning when I went to see them, kind of drowsy with all the tiles ready, he said next time he would like to have a unisex bath, please. And a very special thanks also to Blueprint Magazine, our sponsors for the exhibition, who have been so generous also in previous exhibitions. In fact, after the lecture, Blueprint will invite you all in the bathhouse for drinks, and I will give some information on their Blueprint sessions, which is, I was told, an unconventional design award, sort of in the form of a public debate, which will take place next Thursday? Is that Wednesday? Sorry, next Wednesday. But finally, Klein Dyson is a practice based in Tokyo, which in recent years has achieved more and more international acclaimed fame, or recognition maybe, I would say. Astrid Klein and Mark Dyson established their practice in 1991, 2 years after first arriving in Tokyo. That's right. And initially I was told that you only wanted to stay for 3 weeks, but they were so inspired by the culture and drawn to the city that they stayed until now. So I think in your speech tonight and in the exhibition we will feature some of this appreciation and interpretation of that interest. So please join me in welcoming Klein Dyson.
Thank you very much for those words. We'd just like to say thank you again to the AA, first of all for inviting us, secondly for making such a fantastic job of the bathhouse. We'll explain why in a moment. We should also, from our side, like to thank Virgin Atlantic for flying us over here and for being our client in Tokyo, and Rissa and Partners, one of the real estate companies we work with in Japan, who sponsored the exhibition as well. This is Astrid Klein. I'm Mark Dytham, and we've been in Japan 15 years. One other thing I need to say. Over here, we have my first client, the first architect I ever worked for, Tim Phillips, which were her Norman Preston's partners when I was 16. There's Tim. And also Peter Watson. That was the first building site I ever worked on, again, when I was 16. So thanks for coming. It's a long time since I've seen you. So,
also very pleased that there are lots of friends we haven't seen in years.
Thank you for coming. So, yeah, we've been away for 15 years, and it started off as 3 weeks and 3 months, 3 years. I'd just like to say to people, we've been in Japan over 10 years now. That's it kind of gets a little bit scary. I guess
we quite haven't connected the projector, have we?
We don't connect it.
All right. The most important thing.
Okay, that was it. It's going to need to think a little bit now. So you can all see we use Keynote software. Okay. Klein Dytham All-Stars. We used to call ourselves Klein Dytham Architecture, but it's really important that you know we work as a team. And without the team of our office staff, we're 12 people at the moment. And also the team of people we work with, constructors, clients, graphic designers, none of the work you see here tonight would be possible. So I think it's really important that we begin to call ourselves All-Stars and give everybody due credit. So this is our office. Oops. Hopefully that is not going to keep doing that.
What happened?
Okay, this is our office. It's in a warehouse in the middle of Tokyo, and we share it with 5 other creative types, graphic designers, computer graphic artists, and DJ, and a microbrewery company.
It's a big space called Deluxe. Not so much because the interior is luxurious, but because it's a huge space, and this is a luxury in Tokyo.
And this is the main space. We lost the first slide, unfortunately. But we use this main space for our meetings. And in the evenings, we started off having one small exhibition a month there. Then it was once a week. And it gained momentum, and we're having a couple of exhibitions or exhibits each week. This is typical of the things we put on. This is a music festival, another music, an improv music thing. A gallery. We turned it into a gallery. We'd show our work there. We'd also show the work of the graphic designers. These are carpets. These things are a little show of things made from $1 or 100 yen shops. The artists took all the things from these really cheap things and made little art displays. And then the space turns into a workshop. This was a workshop we did with Tomato. So our offices are just around the edge of this. We have a mezzanine which overlooks the space, and some offices which are a little bit more reserved. We do things with the British Council. This was when there was an exhibition in London and Tokyo called Jam. We turned our facade of the warehouse into a billboard with Mikey, the graphic artist. Now what happened is these events got bigger and bigger, and our office got bigger and bigger, and although there was a great crossover of work between seeing all of this going on just around our working space, it became a little bit difficult, a little bit disruptive, and we'd have 400 people trying to get into our office one night. That the next morning we'd have a meeting with Bloomberg, and we smelt of tobacco and cigarettes. So it was kind of difficult client relations. So we didn't want to stop these events. So we opened a new space called Super Deluxe, just about 5 minutes from our space. And we've kept Deluxe, what we just saw as our office, and we've opened this new space where we purely do events, and probably about 20 to 25 events a month, all sorts of different things, which you will see. I think I'm just showing this to start with because I think it's important for you to see the context in which we work and the area from which we get our inspiration. So this is an after party for an Issey Miyake show. This is for Rissa and Partners, one of the sponsors here tonight. They had an event, a Super Deluxe, so we can go into suits. This is Exonemo. Again, Super Deluxe is turning out to be quite a vital space in Tokyo. Lots of this electronica type music can't really find its home in a nightclub, yet it can't really find its place in theatre, so it's acting as this crossover space for this new type of music performance. We also act as the preliminary test ground for Miss Universe Japan, so they always have their preliminaries with us. And very bizarre music performances, kind of anything goes. These are just some shots of birthday parties, just general shots of what goes on there. And this begins to inform our work.
Just the creative kitchen in general. And once a month we have an event there called Pechakcha Night, which means chit-chatting in Japanese. And there's going to be one of those tomorrow night at the Apple Store, so you're welcome to witness a bit of fast and furious architectural karaoke, they call it. And what happens is about 50 to 20 presenters show 20 slides each, and each slide for 20 seconds. So you have about 7 minutes to present anything you like, work, a project you just finished, or holiday snapshots, or anything interesting.
Yeah, we thought it was important because there's very few venues in the city, I think London too, but certainly in Tokyo, where you can show your work. You've just finished a project, you're a small firm, you want to show off, you want to show people what you've done, you want to show where you've been on holiday, you've seen something really interesting. So we actually developed this forum so you could come once a month and show and tell. But you know what architects are like when they get hold of a microphone. They go on and on and on and on. And so we put these very strict rules down. So it's 20 slides at 20 seconds a slide. And what's quite interesting, we have quite famous people showing. Toyoito, I think, is on one of these slides. That's Toyoito presenting. It makes the student and the architect very level. And it's quite a levelling experience, and it's quite interesting that some of the students' work looks better than some of the quite famous people we have presenting. So if you've got time tomorrow, come along to the Apple Store on Regent Street, 7 o'clock, we kick off. These are some lighting events in Super Deluxe.
So it's all about crossover of different disciplines, and we quite value that, or it's rather dear to us because it informs our work, maybe not just our work.
This is Super Deluxe. Just go back one. This is Super Deluxe Hotel.
Mark insists.
Well, I've got to explain what these are before people start getting what sort of club we're running. This is Super Deluxe Hotel. It was for Tokyo Designers Block, not this year, the year before last. And we turned the whole space into a hotel. And we got 10 designers design beds: Mark Newson, Jersey Seymour, Klaus and Koivisto Rune. We designed the shower, which sat in the middle of Super Deluxe, and you could have a shower within the space. We had hot and cold running water, and then you could book a bed. And all was going incredibly well until the opening. We had 600 people trying to get in, 400 people within Super Deluxe, and it was 5 o'clock in the morning, and no one would go home. So the whole concept of the hotel kind of failed, but it was very popular and great fun. So we're going to talk a little bit about the bathhouse and why we built one next door.
Yeah, bathhouses traditionally in Japan were the sort of community center. They didn't have bathrooms at their home, so every day they trotted to the bathhouse and had chit-chats and exchanging gossip and all while bathing. And in a bathhouse you have a Bandai-san, who is this lady here. She sits at a so-called reception counter and makes sure that the men go into the men's side and the women into the women's side, and that everything is in order.
She can actually see both sides, so she tends to be
with this particular mirror. Now, please do remember this mirror.
It may crop up in another project.
Right, and yes, she just knows it all, and she's seen it all in her life. So therefore, it's okay for her to see the naked men, and not the other way around. So this is inside the bathhouse, where you first sit down on a little stool, which are not in the picture right here, and then while facing the mirror, you wash yourself, you shave yourself, you brush your teeth and all. And once you're kind of proper clean, you hop into the bath. Oops, a little title came up here. Taps, familiar. And you know, after you finished your bath, you're kind of so hot, you need to kind of take a little break with a little drink and have a little chat to the Bandai-san till you cool down.
So this is where all the information used to get passed in Japan. So we thought it was quite appropriate to use this as a metaphor to show our work, so you can have a gossip about things while sitting in the bath. So please go and get your information shower next door after the lecture.
And a virtual bath.
And a virtual bath. Now, what you've seen on the walls are pictures of Mount Fuji in different scenes of Japan, and they're all hand painted. And there's only a few guys left in Japan who actually paint these walls as the bathhouses begin to die out. But they're absolutely amazing. And it takes this guy a couple of hours to paint one side, and then he paints the male side, then we go across and paint the female side. the interesting story is he charges £500 to paint the two paint the two pictures in the bathhouse. But if a Japanese mafia guy, a yakuza, would like one doing, he charges 2 million yen, something like £20,000 to paint one, and that's how these guys make money. So their patrons are the yakuza in Japan, which is quite interesting.
So you have all these still images of Mount Fuji or other hand-painted stories, and we thought that it might be nice to have a moving image instead of a still image, just to keep the interest up for the younger generations. Hence, sort of, moving image at the Bass house. Yeah, we have a big interest in baths in general, and so we thought we start our real work today with the Gummy Bass. The Gummy Bass was an installation for Interni, and the theme was Interni in Piazza, which means interiors in a plaza.
In the plaza.
And it was for the Milano Salone del Mobile in 2002. Two.
Maybe.
Okay, we had to make an interior in a public square, and we decided for the most private space, the most private interior in a house, which is the bathroom. And we realized that until then the bathrooms, although it was the spot where you were naked the longest, it was the most uncomfortable space. It's cool and slippery, therefore
hard.
Dangerous, hard, sharp, glass, ceramic, stainless steel. And I thought, this is not very comfortable to the touch. Let's come up with something a bit softer. And so we came up with the Gummy Tiles, which are made from Technogel. And because we all had fun as kids with the little duck in the bath, we thought we add a bit of fun here too. And the little duck doubles up as a massage element.
Scratch it back.
So Technogel is used for bicycle saddles and wheelchair seats, and you can push it and pull it, and it stays a little bit in the shape. For example, here you can see the sink, which has it's just a big Technogel tile, which is pulled into shape by the drain. And in a minute you can see the lady pushing down, and you'll see the way it deforms the sink.
So the whole thing is completely soft. It's actually called Memory Gel, and it's made by an Italian company. And we wanted also to, instead of making this big globally heavy bath, we actually used we thought the tile is actually quite nice and people can associate with that. So that's why we actually tiled it in these sort of nice tile sizes. And we're hopefully turning this into a product. So in a couple of years, there are a couple of technical issues with it, but it's actually waterproof, the material. So.
Okay, a big jump in size, some real serious work here. We are looking down from our project onto this beautiful greenery of a very old shrine, and so those are very old trees, couple of 100 years, and it's a rare sight in Japan to have so much greenery in front of you, and we thought to make the best of it.
Yeah, that's typical of the context we work in: expressways, temple, office buildings. I think there's a bowling alley. You can see the bowling pin on the top right. So it's actually a complete mess, but there's this oasis in front of the building. Now, obviously, you can see which is our building, but again, very odd context which we have to work in. Our site is only 9 meters wide. It's 30 meters deep and 7 meters wide. That's fine, and 7 meters wide at the end. The sites are very expensive. We've got to build to the maximum we possibly can. The building is 10 stories, so it's about 31 meters high. But because we get earthquakes in Japan, the foundations go down, or the piles go down 38 meters. And the basement of the building, the first from ground level to basement 1, well, there is no basement, it's full of concrete. You've got 2.5 metre slab of concrete, which acts as a keel to hold this blade up.
But because we have all this greenery here, we thought we'll have very deep balconies to look out onto this greenery and have a drink at sunset or a little barbecue party with your friends. Usually in Japan the balconies are not very deep, a meter at the most, just the bare minimum necessary for the firemen to kind of clamber in. And they usually end up as just a storage space rather than a place you can enjoy being outside. But because the balconies are so deep, it also meant that it would make a big indentation. Is that how you say?
Big setback.
Big setback. Big dekopoko.
This is the only drawing tonight. We don't like showing drawings, but we thought we'd better show one so we prove we do drawings, and we actually do them in Japanese. But it also illustrates just the plan of this. I think it's quite important. This is a 10-story building, but we've been working with our UP's office in Japan, and the only columns in the building are the actual lift core, the grey area, which Astrid will point to.
This is the lift core and the pipe space. And the
pipe spaces, but they also point out the columns that run along the walls. They're only 250 millimeters, and they act in compression and tension. So as the earthquake comes, it goes over this side of columns going to tension, these go into compression. They're incredibly thin. And also what happens at the actual corner of the room that looks out at both sides, in fact, the side that looks over to the greenery and the side Astrid points out looks over to the town. You don't get this big column, which you would always get in Japan, on the corner. So you've actually pushed these columns, you made them incredibly thin, and as I say, turn them into these compression and tension members.
Same for the beams.
Yeah, we'll go show
Mark is a lot better at explaining structural things.
We thought also tonight we'd show you how we made things. We think it's quite important that a lot of our, a lot of decisions that we come through working with the construction company and developing up these ideas. This whole basement will be filled with concrete. This will be the weight that holds the building down. Those piles then go down another 30 meters from that level. So it just gives you some idea of the forces that we have to play with. Here's the lift shaft just coming out of the ground, and it's actually built by almost like a shipbuilding company. The amount of steel we have to put in to make this core incredibly stiff to give us these very light structure on the two side walls. These are the bottoms of the 250 millimeter columns. They're hand built and incredibly strong.
The wall of the columns themselves.
It's 25 mil thick. And here we're lifting some of it into place.
I mean, all this looks probably very, very chunky to most of you, and
it looks very delicate to us.
Just because of the earthquake rules. But every time we come back to Europe and see spindly columns and really skinny balconies, balcony slabs, and say, ooh, how can that possibly stand up without kind of, collapsing? We're so used to chunky bits.
So what we've done also, you can see there's a lack of beams there. We have a front beam.
Just the front beam.
And then we've dropped our precast slabs in between the beams depth. So we get basically a beam-free space within the apartment building. This is all quite new in Japan. That's looking up. You can see there's quite a lot of steel in there. And that's looking down. That's the only beam you get at the front of the building. Then we just drop the precast concrete slabs in. So it's quite hairy for Japan. So there we are, the finished product. Do you want to talk about the screen?
Yeah. So because of this big setback, we weren't quite keen on that. We were trying to put a screen in front of the building to link these 10 stories together. And so rather than having just the flat bars making up the handrail, sometimes the flat bars kind of clamber up the building and link up with the next floor.
This is an incredibly low-cost building for Japan. And initially we were thinking of a glass screen on the front, but there wasn't enough money. So we went to just a very simple louver system, which you'll see a bit later. And these louvers, which form the handrails at a 100 millimeter pitch, which is the minimum in Japan, And they just slip
maximum,
through, maximum, sorry. And they slip through and connect each of the floors together to make this single sheet.
And then the openings are dictated by the fire department. You need that much to climber in and
this is
rescue.
this is in Nagoya, and that's a home of Toyota. One of our earlier projects is also for this client, and we built him a car garage for his supercar collection. And so there's this big sort of interesting car. So what we've done here is we've covered the louvers with a car paint. Comes from Toyota, and it's one of those pearl paints that changes colour from sort of, well, this changes from sort of light green, like a warm green, to quite a cool green, like
turquoise blue.
A pearl paint. So as the sun moves, the whole of the facade changes colour, and as you move too, you get the same effect. And then you get this quite interesting effect as it gets dark. The actual louvers are so thin, they actually disappear as the light comes on within the building. You can see the balconies there. And this was designed for students and also designed as room sharing. Again, that's quite unusual in Japan. Two people sharing a room. You have a kitchen. You go for what it's so you have a kitchen downstairs and bathroom upstairs, and then two identical rooms at the front which overlook the greenery.
One here and one on the top.
And so there's no fighting over who has the best room.
Who has the bigger sized one and the better view. They're either two identical one next to each other or on top of each other.
But there's been a big movement in the last few years in Japan. People are actually wanting nicer apartments in Japan, and we're finding all sorts of tricks and ways to make this happen within very tight spaces.
So they call this a designer mansion. Designer mansion has become a bit of an excuse for having exposed concrete and not investing into too many finishes. Saying that you can kind of finish it yourself, but actually you never can, because unlike Europe, you're not allowed to put a nail in the wall. You're not allowed, of course, to paint or wallpaper.
That's if you rent it. These are all rental apartments.
Right.
Yeah.
So here you can see the two rooms on top of each other, which are just closed off by light polycarbonate screens. Behind this brown wall, you have the entrance, the kitchen, the bathroom, the closet, and whatever.
Washing machine, bits and bobs. And then each of these apartments, there are 17 apartments. Each has different finishes, so each of the apartments is individual. And you can see there how clean the ceiling is. We have no beams. So in the future, if this gets redeveloped, all of the walls can be moved around completely freely within the space.
All right. This is our next project. It's Mori Arts Museum Cafe in Roppongi Hills on the 52nd floor. And remember when we said, remember that picture from the bathhouse? It's a big lollipop convex mirror. Mr. Mori, who owns Roppongi Hills, is quite keen to show off the city as much as he can. It's his pet project, and so we took a hint from that, and rather than having just the people sitting next to the window having a good view, we devised little podias, stages which go up as the further you go away from the window. And rather like in a French brasserie way, at the back you have the mirror. We kind of put up these convex lollipop mirrors, which give a bit of a distorted image of the city. But it is the arts cafe after all. So
you always get half of a cafe at this height. They get two people get the great view, a table for four, and the other two have to look at a blank wall. So this way you can adjust the mirror yourself, and you get a view out to the city.
Alrighty.
Okay, this is a recent project. It's just started being in the magazines in Europe. It's a wedding chapel. It's in the southern Alps of Japan. It's 2 hours from Tokyo. You have to understand that the wedding business in Japan is big business indeed. And normally it would take place in a hotel. It's probably the Grand Hyatt in Tokyo does 10 weddings a day. You've got all these brides moving around the building, the actual coordination and flow patterns.
Without meeting each other.
They're not allowed to meet one another, so you have all these amazing things going on in the lifts. 30% of the revenue of a hotel in Japan is generated from weddings, so it's big business.
They are not necessarily religious weddings. You can be just Protestant or Catholic for the day for your wedding. You get born Shinto, and
married Christian.
Yeah, married Christian and die Buddhist. So
this is a Christian bit. So.
Well, we said why all this performance? I mean, getting married is a special day. That's all that counts. We'll make a special building for that, a memorable one to boot. This is in a very natural setting. You'll see we'll show that to you in a minute.
Kind of natural.
Well, there are woods around there. I mean, natural for Japan. And so we imagined these 2 leaves that just kind of fluttered to the ground and, almost in communion, and formed the chapel.
We'll give you a little hint of what it looks like to start with.
This is from the top. One leaf is made from glass, and you see all the leaves of the vane making the structure, and the other leaf looks a bit like as if it has been eaten by a caterpillar.
Making a sort of lacy veil, this notion of veil and lace and whiteness was something that was in our minds really from day one. The client, we should tell you a little bit about the client. He owns a big wedding business, and he bought this old hotel which had gone bankrupt. It did have a wedding chapel, but it didn't have a roof on it, and it got really wet when there was a wedding, so they could only have one a day, and they'd dodge the showers.
Well, it actually looks a bit more like a classroom. So
this was designed by Mario Bellini in the bubble in Japan, and the whole thing went belly up, and our client bought it, and we're now actually doing the whole master plan for the hotel. But our first project was this wedding chapel. So this is the site, the location. It's within this walled garden. You can see the huge hotel at the back. It's a 150 bed hotel, as I say, built about 12 years ago. So we have this wedding chapel, and I need to say a couple of bits about that. The fact that the veil actually opens and closes, and we're going to show you how we made the veil and how all that works in a moment. But we have this building. It's in the southern Alps of Japan, and it gets kind of hot in the summer and very cool in the winter, and we had to find a way to heat and cool this. So we've built a basement which is being put in here, which we heat up, and we heat the air up in the room. It takes about half an hour to heat the room up, and then we blast it up just before the wedding. The wedding takes place, and then they open it up and all the heat escapes, and we close it down and refill the room, and the same process goes on.
Not very ecological.
And not very romantic either. But so anyway, we're just telling you a little bit about it. It's quite interesting in the end. So here we are putting the foundations of the building in. And here you can see the top truss of that leaf that Astrid was talking about, and the veins. This is where the veins will connect. And there's the structure up. We took that cross away, by the way. We don't like that cross
they left it for construction. I don't know whether they were maybe worried it might be a bad omen if they took it away before they started construction.
So there we are putting in the beams. Some lovely reinforcing. And you saw the veil on the first shot, and we'll show you how that was made. This was made in northern Japan, up in Akita-ken.
We love going to the factory. It's one of those crossovers we really, which are really dear to us. Going to the factory, you actually see how they make things, and it might give you ideas of how to do things better than you would otherwise do. I mean, these are the experts, and we really like to draw on their experience and knowledge rather than dictating from our side how to do things. I mean, who are we to say?
That's right. That's right. So this is making the big petals that make up the veil, and we've got a 400-ton press here, which is pressing down. That's one of the six segments of the veil. Here we've got the press. You can see that three-dimensional press, the top and the bottom, and then a laser cut template, which they just check, which they use to check the curvature, plus or minus 2 millimeters. And then you see all the laser cut holes, 4,700 holes, which make up the veil. And each one of those will be plugged a little bit later with an acrylic lens to allow the light through. So here we are on a jig just testing the curvature before they weld it onto the structure. And there they are, all the petals. So these are all laser cut. Everyone is different, and it's just cut out and then pressed. This is the hinge point of the veil. That hinge will actually sit below ground. And there's the veil just getting the structure ready and doing the welding tests. Yeah. And there's it almost completed. It was, here we're doing all of the weight comes down onto these hinge points. So it's 11 tons, so 5.5 tons come down onto one of those. So they do this ultrasonic testing of all the weld joints to check there are no dry joints, and it's not going to crack. Here we are with it finished. Same shirt, in fact, isn't it? I do change. It was. There's another interesting fact here. The drawing said 6,022 millimeters to the top point, to the ground, and of course, being Japan, it was 6,022 millimeters. Perfect.
They're incredibly precise, and the craftsmanship quality is unbelievable. Every single time we do say, well, how did they do that? I mean, it's maniacs.
We were talking about this at the lecture last night, but there is this general willingness to make things very, very well in Japan. There's a desire to make the best. There's pride in people's work. You can see by the photograph here. They're all as proud as Punch of the fact that it's all finished. And they're all also interested in what this thing is going to be. Obviously, they just see this part. So when we go there, we take up a little DVD of the animation and begin to show them how it's all going to go together. And then they all come to the opening of the first day when the chapel opened. So it's an amazing sort of family affair. So the other thing is when, because of the recession in Japan, they try and spread the work around. So the veil was made in northern Japan and we're in central Japan. So it had to be moved 250 kilometers, again through that's the Southern Alps there at the back. So not only do we make this thing, we've got to work out how we make it and then take it apart and then transport it to the site. So that's it being transported. And you begin to forget about this when you draw things as a student or a young architect. You begin to make these things and it's all kind of great and wonderful. But then it's actually nice, these sort of lives that all of this, your sort of design affects, the team of people. This guy's going to be telling his wife he carried this crazy thing, had to drive through the mountains
all night,
of Japan.
And this is 6 o'clock in the morning. They were just sitting there in front of the construction site, waiting for the construction site to open.
So here we are lifting it in, and the four main pieces, and then the pieces of the actual patch pieces are placed between. And I think the next shot is the first time it opened.
Ta-da! It works.
So nobody's really bothered, Of course it would work,
Only Mark taking the picture, of the memorable moment.
This was made by Kawasaki Heavy Industries, and when we talked to them about the project, we were kind of concerned that we'd sold the idea to the client, and then we were kind of, shit, we've got to make this work. And but we said, we've got this problem, we've got to get this thing opening. They said, look, we designed stadium roofs that open and close. And within about 5 minutes, they'd worked out the size of the hydraulic rams, and it was all over and done with. So this is putting on the glass at the back, and there's the completed project sitting in the garden.
So in front of the chapel, you have a little pond, and then what's very green is the champagne toast lawn. What happens is, I can't see it on this one too much. Just a minute. Kind of turning around here. Do you think we're going to see it now?
No.
You from the hotel.
I'll go forward a couple. There you go.
from the hotel, you come down those steps and you enter the chapel. You have the ceremony and all, and as the groom lifts the veil of the bride, there goes the veil, and you get kissed by nature. And once that is done, they all step out here over the stepping stones and make sure the bride doesn't fall in, although the client reassures us that it's not too much of a problem. It will be a memorable day if she falls in. So we are kind of a bit relieved that he's quite a cool client. And then they come over here and have the champagne toast and walk over that little path behind a concrete wall back into the hotel. So pretty much one way you get married. No going back.
Meanwhile, the other couple are waiting at the top to come down again. So there's about an hour and 20-minute cycle for this to happen. One thing we should say about this is when Astrid and I first arrived in Japan, we went down to Osaka, and Tadao Ando was very nice. We stayed in his office for a week, and we were shown around all of his projects, and we went to see his wedding chapel, Mount Rocco Chapel, up on Mount Rocco, and we'd seen all the photographs in GA magazine, and it looks like this, perfect chapel that maybe like a monastery or something.
A hermit monk was kind of taking care of it.
What's going on? So
in the middle of nowhere.
So we take a cab up to Mount Rocco and driving through all the scenery. Then we come to this enormous hotel, and the cab driver drops us off there. We didn't speak any Japanese at the time. So we're walking up the mountain, down the mountain, keep walking past this damn hotel. We can't find out where this chapel is, you see. Then suddenly somebody comes out from the hotel saying, Klein Dytham-san, Mr. Ando, and we're like thinking, what on earth is what's going on? Well, the wedding chapel was a part of the hotel, but you're never given any clues about this in the magazines you read. Most of Ando's chapels, apart from the church with a cross on it, are all actually wedding chapels, and they've got huge hotels behind them. And if you look at the drawings really carefully, you can actually see the hotel is drawn on, but no one mentions it at all. So we're here to sort of open it up a little bit. But we found this whole performance and the ceremony actually really informed the design, and taking this slightly sort of taking this twist or this joke on it was quite intriguing.
So here we are inside the chapel, and the steel veil is doubled up with the white fabric on the inside, and the light that falls through the acrylic lenses makes a nice moire pattern. And as the sun turns around, of course, that moire pattern changes. Ooh. And here it's with the veil open, and you can see the cast acrylic backrests of the benches have a little flower pattern inside. It's a little insignificant flower, really, but it grows down that cliff along a little river, and the Japanese character for it is, it's called Renpokuso, which means luck forever, or ongoing luck. And we thought that was a nice theme to pick up on, and so we put them all on those backrests, and it makes a nice continuity across the pond and beyond the greenery, to the greenery beyond, as if they were sort of water plants. There is, for our own little pond, we have this little spring and then a little river kind of flowing down, and it's all been landscaped after the event, but not very long after the chapel was open, we found a frog there.
All these frogs are beginning to spawn and things.
It was like the frog prince.
Somebody had described the landscaping as Teletubby-esque, which I thought was quite a compliment. So this is the veil. As I say, this is 11 tons, but you get no sense of that with the scrim behind, and you can see the light coming through. You actually see the dot of the light as it comes through the lens, and then it projects these rings onto the inner scrim. So the whole construction is about 250 millimeters thick, but actually ends up looking like a piece of lace. Again, more of the Renpokuso. And then, of course, you have night weddings. So we have to find a way to, well, in fact, the chapel naturally lends itself to these night weddings. And this is a lace pattern. We were looking at all sorts of different patterns. And this is actually from an Indian, was it an Indian pattern?
Yeah, Indian paisley pattern. Not that it matters. But
excuse me. The interesting thing here is you can just see the ribs going through the pattern. And so when we put a geometric pattern on it to start with, suddenly you could see this moire and you could see all of the ribs. But as soon as you put a hand-drawn pattern on the veil, you suddenly lose the structure behind it, which is very nice.
It has a bit of an Easter egg appearance as well. I mean, some people like to call it UFO.
Yeah, it gets all sorts of and there he's moving. I've got a video, I forgot to put it in. And then Astrid will tell you the story and cry.
No, I won't actually. You tell it.
This couple, this is the first wedding in the wedding chapel. They work for the construction company that built it. And
we didn't know this till a week before. I mean, we knew that they were very eager in getting this thing done on time.
It's because they were going to be wedding it. That's why it was finished on time. So always try and get somebody.
So it was the kantoku,
the site foreman.
Site foreman and a lady who was doing all the 3D CAD drawings for the chapel.
So there we go. That's the last one.
All right, last project here.
Getting
clean again.
We thought we'd end on some more bathhouse
water-related washing.
Water-related design. So these are soap sinks, and it was for a little exhibition in Tokyo, but we rather like it. And it was for looking at materials and finding new uses for them. And so these are soap sinks.
You're never going to lose that soap again.
You never lose a soap bar because the whole sink is a cast from a piece of soap. They're actually made by Lush, the soap company here. And the idea is that you rub the side of the sink.
And then they become more and more organic and
just like a pebble on a beach. It gets rounded and soft and becomes softer and softer.
Till they disappear. And by that time, you had enough of it anyway, so you want to change soap. So you're going to change from mint to vanilla.
So the idea is that they're made from a soy soap that's quite hard, and that actually lasts for 3 months and gets smaller and smaller. So they actually change with the seasons. So and then I think the last one's a lemon, like a lemon sink. So I think that's the last one. We've kept it fairly. We talked last night. We've kept it fairly short this evening, just so we can open it up for a few questions tonight. If anybody has any questions. And there'll be drinks afterwards, so please stay and please drop into the bathhouse at the back. Thank you very much.
Whoa, that was hyper quick.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was saying.
Wow.
Are there any questions?
You thought you didn't get your deal here.
Everybody's very thirsty.
Okay, so maybe while you are thinking of some questions, I'm going to take you up on your promise or your dislike for showing drawings. Yesterday that was very clear when you were talking with Teledesign, who mainly showed a lot of concept sketches and sort of construction drawings of their work, and today you only showed one. So I was wondering, is there some part of you which likes images more? Somebody said yesterday that's the difference between the RCA and the AA. We like drawings and concept, they like image. But I think it might have to do with part how you present yourself and the way you like to sort of get across your ideas rather than abstracting them, but being very direct.
I think we believe that at the end of the day, we are here to build three-dimensional things, whether they are small or buildings, they then take on a life of their own. And once a building is finished, once an interior is finished, you hand it over to the client. And by then, your project has to be self-speaking. I mean, all your intentions or your great concepts or your great ideas need to be expressed in that very three-dimensional thing. You cannot, once it's finished, stand next to it every day and explain to the passerby what the high-flying ideas behind that were. I mean, if it's not expressed in what you actually done, then all the high-flying ideas were for nothing. So that's probably our main thing. We might add to that that having been working in Japan, where we cannot even explain or at least at the beginning, we couldn't explain our high-flying ideas because we didn't speak Japanese so well. So we had to kind of draw, make models, build the thing, and voila. And we couldn't explain it. Maybe that has to do with that as well.
I think also we just came from, we spend all our times making things, and there isn't time to really reflect on our work. We don't really do many redrawings in books and things. We just show photographs and images. We're very interested, as you can see, of how things go together. And I like showing the process, and I don't like it to be too mysterious and showing wispy drawings or whatever. I quite like the fact that, you know, we make this wedding chapel and you go to a factory and it's a big steel factory. It's a 400-ton press, and we like showing that side of it. I think, and also we came, you know, when we were educated, it was all about drawings. You know, everybody drew things. There was very, very little chance to build, and we're quite lucky. We actually have a chance to build. So we want to show what we've actually built, and not show what's actually on the drawing board. I'm just trying to find a
I just wanted. What's the relationship between the activities you talked about in the Super Deluxe space, the talks and the exhibitions and the kind of crossover events that you do, and your architectural work? I mean, I assume there is a relationship in terms of ideas. And second to that, could you see a time where you would come back to Europe and practice here? And if so, would you carry on working in that particular way, or do you think that's something very specific to Tokyo?
Okay, Super Deluxe. As creative people, I'd like to think of ourselves as creative. You output all the time, or at least it's expected of you to have great ideas and, you know, give them away, and you think hard of what to produce, and you know, comes a point where you're empty, and you need to fuel up. You need to fuel up with what's going around you, newest trends, what other people do, just refresh and take a break or change of mind, and that's where Super Deluxe comes in amongst others. At the end of the day, we make furniture, interiors, buildings for people, for everybody, anybody. Everybody lives in a house. Everybody lives in an interior. Everybody sits on furniture. So it's quite important to meet this everybody rather than, you know, kind of make it up.
Yeah, no, I think it's. I mean, we've shown quite selective, just quite a short selection of work tonight. I was conscious that I'd shown footwork here before, so we're just trying to show new work tonight. But there is a very strong crossover with the graphics we use, with just thoughts and ideas, and meeting sort of young people in Japan. And it's very difficult to know when that thing you've seen, the film you've seen, the book you've read, when that thought is going to come out. We're happy to run Super Deluxe and put a lot of effort into that. And it does trickle out in all sorts of unknown ways into our work. Just the fact that we organise the things too. Our work is about organising and directing. A group of people to build a building. The same for Super Deluxe. So those skills actually come back into our work quite a lot. So we find it quite an inspiring place.
Also, I think it's quite important that you are happy. You know yourself that once you're tired and worn out, work doesn't come easy. It just doesn't flow out. But if you're sort of relaxed and happy and had a great day, all of a sudden, hey, this was what I was trying to find all the time. The idea just pops out. Also, we hope every single time.
No, it does. It does. and it's not only us two; it's our staff that interact with Super Deluxe. Coming back to the second part of the question, would we come back to the UK? I mean, as somebody said who came to my apartment, it doesn't look like you've unpacked yet, because I've still got boxes stacked around. I think Astrid's kind of nested a bit more than I have. But it's just an interesting place to work at the moment. It's a good base for us. We get inspiration from the city and from Super Deluxe and things. And I think maybe as things change, we may begin to work somewhere else. We don't know when we'll be dragged off or we'll drift somewhere else. I mean, I come back to London 4 or 5 times a year. For different things. I think travel is really important. We don't want the great ability that we have being a foreigner in Japan is we see what they don't see. We didn't start with that slide tonight, but I normally show a slide of a taxi cab, and if a Japanese person saw the taxi cab slide, they wouldn't think it was just a normal taxi cab. But we see the white gloves, the lace back seat rests. We see the satellite navigation cruising system thing they have. We see
Plastic
the can holder, the plastic flowers, the lights, the sweets, the novel, the tissues. This whole conglomeration of stuff in the back of this cab, which is there for you to use, But Japanese people don't normally see that. That's normal for them. So travel is really important to help you see things backwards and forwards. So we don't want to get stuck in Japan. Travel is important. So we would like to come back here or go to another country and do work. But we're very conscious that you have to be somewhere for quite some period of time before you can start to build. I think that learning the culture in which you build is actually quite important to get the best out of it. And so we certainly know how to use Japan and the Japanese construction companies and things to make things work. I'm always slightly nervous of coming back to the UK and trying to build here. Although they made a great job of the bathhouse. Do you just want to turn the projector? Can you turn the projector on 1 second? Sorry.
Yes.
Are you holding lectures in Europe mainly, or in Japan?
We travel once a month. Somewhere around the world. More recently, Costa Rica, and I'm teaching at Berkeley. I've got a lecture at SciArc next month. Also back here for Australia, Tasmania. Except I went there in July and I thought it was going to be hot, and of course it was winter there. It was snowing when I got to Hobart, so it was a bit of a mistake last year. But we travel around a lot, and that's important as well.
We also teach at university. So.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we teach in Japanese as well. Yeah. So that's. I'm just going to run this. It's just the wedding chapel when it opens. Somebody asked me how long this took to render.
It's 38 seconds to open, and you'll see afterwards it takes 42 seconds. It takes longer to close. It takes longer to close because when it's about a meter off the ground, it closes very, very slowly, just to make sure that there are no kids in the way. There are sensors all over the place and 3 staff just checking from every angle that nobody.
The security make there's 2 infrared beams, and then there are 3 buttons which have to be pressed by the staff to either side. They're in their black coats who suddenly have to press.
I mean, it's easier to press the nuclear bomb button, I think.
Get this going. So you can see the light sort of streaming through the lenses.
Was steel a natural choice?
Yeah.
Was it?
We
Can't
didn't
remember.
look at plastic at all.
I think initially we wanted to have it in glass,
It was glass.
but
to
then it
start with.
didn't make sense at all. It was just too heavy and unmanageable.
I think it came from seeing roofs and things which open and close in Japan. That's why it became steel. We knew they got the technology.
Initially, the client wanted a pergola, the Glycinia pergola, and so where the light filtered through leaves. That was his image, and so we somehow thought, yes, glass, of course, and 2 leaves of glass, but
There was no
then
contrast there.
soon we realized that those 2 leaves were not going to be the same, because one had to open and close, and that just makes it fundamentally different. So we have the classic leaf with the veins, and then the other leaf which has the veins, sort of, those longer bamboo grassy leaves. Also, we post-rationalize.
You kind of feel the weight of it as well, which is really nice.
From outside, you do. It's
Because it's sort of so slow and gives a lot
but it's
of drama.
completely silent when it opens. It's very unnerving.
Well, I put the music up a little bit.
But
Right.
I
What was
think
your first project in Japan, and how did the momentum for your practice develop?
Shall I put it up?
Yeah.
You keep talking.
First project was for Idee workstation, and Idee is a furniture company, and this was the site was a gasoline station and a petrol station, and we built this furniture showroom around it with sort of veil on it.
This was
Another
back in
bit.
1996, and this was our first project, and that was the site. And we did a thing where we actually kept the old petrol kiosk. There were two pumps at the front, and this was quite revolutionary in Japan. Nobody had really recycled buildings before. They don't renovate buildings in Japan; they recycle them. And this, so we said we'd leave this. We talked to the client and said, do you think we can leave it? Which was a big problem, because they would normally knock this down and make it completely flat. We said, well, can we keep that and have a think about it? So we actually left that there, and we built our building around it. And we've kept the kiosk exactly as it was. The second floor, or the first floor, sorry, is an office, and the ground floor is the kiosk, is the cashier and toilet. Then we've built this building around it, which is completely empty, so that just remains sort of the jewel within it. Then we've kept the floor as expanded metal, so you can see the building within the building. And the other reaction was the screen on the front, because of this. Sorry, there's a big telegraph pole. You can see that beautiful telegraph pole there with all the wires and stuff on the front. And although we liked that a lot, we didn't actually want to see that from the inside, and we wanted to keep it quite calm. So we've put this veil on the front, or this screen on the front, which filters that out. And we also, the client, we knew he'd fill the furniture showroom full of furniture. It'd all be jammed against this glass facade. He wanted an all-glass facade. And so to actually keep it tidy, we've frosted that, so you actually can't quite see what's inside. You can't see the mess on the inside.
So if you ask the right questions, you get to see more. So don't say, what was your second building? Yes, you were wanting to ask something.
But you are basically now a Japanese practice, and the traditional way of growing up as an architect in Japan is that you come from university directly to some practice, stay there for a few years, and then I don't know what happens to those people that have been at one practice, but nobody takes somebody that has been working somewhere else.
Correct.
So you are a Japanese practice now, and what happens with the young architects? They come. So how do you go about with this strange Japanese tradition?
Okay, well, we worked for Toyo Ito, so we worked, but we only worked there for 2 years. Sejima worked there for 8 years before she graduated, and things went on. So we were, and what generally happens with a Japanese firm is you work for one of the masters, you work there for 8 years, say, you graduate, you set up your own company, then he will pass you work. So a little bit of work, and that keeps you going and gets you started. That's how Sejima and many young architects started in Japan. For us, we hadn't worked there for long enough, so we went out on our own, and that was tough. There was no work from Ito until 4 years later.
Not really.
Until no, there was a period where there was no work, and then he saw that we'd actually got up on our own feet. We were actually doing okay. Then he felt he could pass work across to us, so he did lots of furniture projects with him for different things.
Yeah.
But you have been now there for so long time that there have been architects in your practice that have left you.
Yes.
So you're doing the Japanese
We're doing
thing
exactly the same. We've had a girl leave, and she's a part of the family. And if we get busy, we'll pass on work to her, and it will be exactly the same. And Super Deluxe is a part of that family too. So somebody like Jun Aoki worked for Izozaki, and he's a part of that family. We're very much a part of the Ito family. We go to the weddings and all of the stuff. Just went to his daughter's wedding, and all of the old boy network that work with him. There's a yearly party and things. And it's really nice.
It's all those old boy networks which we are dreading when we're young students, isn't it?
I mean, the other thing is there's very little rivalry in Japan. Again, just like building, everybody seems to, there's no backbiting and stealing projects. Everybody knows what's their project, and they shouldn't tread on this person's toes, and it all sort of works in a really nice way. I think they call it wa in Japan, or they do call it wa. This Japanese sense of wa, balance.
Well, I'd like to thank Klein Dytham for the wonderful lecture and
Thank you.
the exhibition. And Blueprint is going to invite all of you for drinks in the exhibition next door now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.